Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to sift through the noise, pull out the key intelligence from loads of sources, and get you up to speed fast. Today, we're tackling something I think almost everyone has experienced, the quiet chaos caused by micromanagement.
Yeah, we're talking about that helicopter boss, right?
Right.
The one who's always hovering, obsessed with tiny details, needs to be in on every single email. And our sources are pretty clear. This isn't just annoying. It's a serious operational problem.
What really gets me is the gap between what these managers think they're doing and what actually happens. They often genuinely believe, they're ensuring quality, boosting productivity.
But the reality, it's the exact opposite. The data we looked at shows it's just a huge drain financially and emotionally, because really what it boils down to is a massive lack of trust.
A profound lack of trust, yeah, in the people they hired to do the job.
And the stakes are incredibly high. It's like organizational self-sabotage. We saw one survey, it reported that poor project performance, which often stems from this kind of management dysfunction, wastes something like $122 million for every $1 billion invested.
Wow, $122 million. That's not small change.
Not at all. This isn't just some soft HR issue. It's a direct line from bad management to, well, hemorrhaging money.
Okay, so our mission today is pretty straightforward. We're going beyond just the complaints. We want to understand the psychology, the business impact of micromanagement, and then crucially give you some practical, actionable strategies for leaders and employees.
Yeah.
How to move away from this control freak style towards something genuinely empowering.
Right, towards engagement that actually works.
So let's dive in. Let's start with quantifying the damage. If the helicopter boss wants results, well, the first thing they actually create is this productivity paradox.
Exactly. It instantly creates a bottleneck. Think about it. If a manager has to sign off on every little thing, they become the choke point for every decision.
Right. So employees can't just get on with things. They're stuck, waiting for approval, waiting for feedback.
And that dependency just grinds everything to a halt. Projects get delayed, momentum dies.
We found some hard numbers on this, too. It's not just a feeling. 71%, that's nearly 3/4, of workers surveyed said micromanagement actively hurt their job performance.
71%. So the very thing meant to improve performance is actually tanking it for most people involved.
It's madness. And then there's the psychological side, the emotional cost, which is huge.
Oh, immense. Constantly being watched, second-guessed. It ramps up anxiety. Stress levels go through the roof. People lose that sense of autonomy, that feeling of control over their own work. And over time, that just chips away at their confidence, because everything they do feels like it's under suspicion.
And you see this feeding directly into the burnout crisis, don't you?
Absolutely. Something like 89% of workers say they've experienced burnout. And when you dig into the causes, micromanagement comes up again and again as a major contributor, a preventable one, too.
This constant pressure, this lack of trust,
Yeah.
it leads to that whole quiet quitting thing we hear so much about.
Exactly. It's often not about being lazy or defiant. It's a coping mechanism, really. Employees figure out, okay, my extra effort isn't valued here, only my compliance is. So why bother? They check out mentally. They do the bare minimum their contract requires because, well, the motivation to do more has just been crushed by distrust.
And this isn't some fringe issue. We're talking about potentially half the U.S. workforce operating in this kind of disengaged state.
Which is just terrible for business, and it directly kills innovation, too, right?
Completely. If you know every new idea is going to be picked apart, scrutinized down to the last detail,
Yeah.
you just stop suggesting them.
Why take the risk? Why propose something fresh and maybe a bit different if it means facing endless questions and corrections? It's easier, safer to just stick to the exact instructions you were given.
So you end up with teams that are, compliant, but totally stagnant. No new ideas, no creative problem solving.
And that lack of growth opportunity is stifling. People need space to learn, to try things, maybe even to fail sometimes. Micromanagement shuts all that down.
And the ultimate bottom line, people leave. Micromanagement is consistently listed as one of the top 3 reasons people quit their jobs.
Which brings us back to the financial cost. High turnover is expensive. Replacing just one employee costs, what was it? About a third of their annual salary on average?
Right. So when you add up the lost productivity, the burnout, the stifled innovation, and the cost of replacing people who've had enough, it's just a massive self-inflicted wound for organizations.
Yeah. You'd think the cost alone would make companies stamp it out immediately.
You would, wouldn't you? So why do managers fall into this trap if it's so damaging what's going on in their heads? Let's try to understand the micromanager's mindset.
Yeah, that's crucial. Because surprisingly, it's often not coming from a place of malice, It's not always about power trips. Frequently, it stems from the manager's own internal stuff, their own anxieties.
But what kind of anxieties are we talking about?
Well, the sources point to things like deep-seated personal insecurity, maybe a fear of failure, their own failure, or the team's reflecting badly on them.
Or perfectionism, that obsessive need for everything to be just so.
Exactly. That high achiever type who just assumes nobody else can possibly meet their standards. Or sometimes it's low self-esteem, or just a fundamental difficulty trusting others.
That makes sense. And context matters too, right? Like remote work seems to have made it worse for some managers.
Definitely. That sudden loss of visibility, not being able to see people working,
Hmm.
it triggered a real feeling of lost control for many managers. So they overcompensated. More check-ins, more requests for updates, more CC'd emails. It became a way for them to manage their anxiety about the work getting done.
Hmm. But hold on.
Hmm.
If it's about their anxiety, does that mean employees suddenly need to become therapists for their bosses?
Mm.
How do you deal with their anxiety without just enabling the micromanaging behavior that's making you miserable and unproductive?
Ugh, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it needs a really strategic approach, which we'll get into when we talk about managing up. But just understanding the motive can help frame your response. Think about high-stakes fields, like, say, healthcare, clinical supervision. Micromanagement is pretty common there.
Okay. Why is that?
Well, studies suggest it's often because the supervisor feels this overwhelming weight of responsibility primarily for patient safety, immediate outcomes. And sometimes that focus overshadows the need to let the trainee learn and develop through practice. It's a tricky balance between ensuring safety and fostering growth.
Right. That makes sense in that specific context. But before we jump into solutions, we should probably clarify something important. The legal side. Is micromanagement actually illegal? Because people throw terms like hostile work environment around.
That's a really common question, and the general answer is no. Just being a bad manager, even a micromanager, isn't usually illegal in itself.
Okay. But
Yeah.
there's a line, isn't there?
There is. It crosses into potential illegality, specifically workplace harassment, if that intense scrutiny is being used selectively. For example, if it's retaliation because an employee reported something, like a safety issue or discrimination. Or, and this is key, if the micromanagement specifically targets someone based on their race, age, gender, disability, or another protected characteristic.
So it's about the motivation behind the scrutiny and whether it's discriminatory or retaliatory. That's the legal distinction.
Precisely. Targeted discriminatory control, that's where it becomes a serious legal issue.
Got it. Okay, so putting the legal worries aside from most cases, what's the actual antidote? If control's the problem, what's the solution?
It comes down to two core ideas, autonomy and entrustment. Basically, shifting from that oppressive control to actually empowering people, giving them the space to make decisions and own their work.
And that's not just about being nice, is it? It actually drives better results.
Absolutely. It's a performance driver. We saw data showing that 7 out of 10 employees say empowerment and engagement are directly linked. When you give people clear ownership over an outcome, let them figure out the how. Performance improves, quality often goes up, and importantly, the manager gets freed up from being stuck in the weeds.
Right. So let's pivot to strategies. What can managers and leaders actually do to build this culture of empowerment? How do they stop being a boss and become more of a coach?
The fundamental shift is moving focus from input, constantly monitoring how the work is done, to defining and tracking output, the results achieved.
And that starts with clarity, right?
Yeah.
Getting expectations straight from the beginning.
Crystal clarity. Because the number one reason projects fail, according to research, fuzzy objectives, lack of clearly defined goals, roles, responsibilities. Managers have to nail this down up front.
So how do they do that effectively? Are there specific tools or frameworks?
Yes, definitely. One that came up repeatedly in the sources is the OKR framework. Stands for Objectives and Key Results.
OKRs, right? I've heard of those. How do they help with micromanagement specifically?
Well, you start with a clear, often ambitious, qualitative objective, like, say, improve customer satisfaction.
Okay.
Then you define specific, measurable, time-bound key results that show progress towards that objective. So a key result might be reduce average support ticket resolution time by 15% this quarter.
I see. So the focus shifts to the result, that 15% reduction.
Exactly. The manager tracks the metric, the key result. As long as the employee is on track to hit that number, the manager doesn't need to meddle in how they're doing it. Are they changing the workflow, using new software? That becomes the employee's domain.
Hmm.
It shifts the conversation from policing effort to measuring achievement.
That makes a lot of sense. It forces the manager to let go of the how. What about that problem where nobody feels responsible? Diffusion of responsibility.
Yeah, that's critical to address. You need clear ownership.
Huh.
For each key result, assign one person who is ultimately accountable for delivering it, no ambiguity. When one person owns it, the manager knows exactly who to talk to, which reduces their urge to chase everyone.
Okay. Clear goals, clear ownership. What else? Planning seems important too.
Hugely important. Managers need to resist that urge to just jump in and start doing. Rushing the planning phase, not allocating enough resources, letting the scope creep. These are major reasons projects derail, which then triggers more micromanagement out of panic.
So, better planning?
Hmm.
Maybe something like agile methodologies.
Yes, Agile can be really helpful here. Breaking down big projects into smaller, manageable chunks, those short, iterative sprints.
How does that specifically counter micromanagement, though?
It provides the manager with frequent, structured visibility into progress. Instead of waiting months for one big, high-stakes deliverable which breeds anxiety, they see tangible progress, small wins, every couple of weeks. This regular feedback loop, seeing things are moving forward, drastically reduces the manager's anxiety about failure. And when their anxiety goes down, their compulsion to constantly check in often does too.
Makes sense. Less uncertainty for them. Okay, what about the people side? Recognition, development.
Can't forget that. Recognition is a massive morale booster, we know that. And things like mentorship programs, they don't just develop skills, they significantly improve retention sources, cited up to 50% better retention rates.
Wow, 50%.
Yeah, and feedback needs to shift. It should be competency-based, focused on growth, on building capability, not just nitpicking errors.
And this isn't just for frontline managers, is it? This thinking needs to go higher up.
Absolutely. Educating senior leadership on what truly drives engagement and retention is vital. It needs to be a continuous learning process throughout the organization.
Okay, great strategies for managers. But now let's flip it. What if you are the one dealing with the helicopter boss? It can feel pretty powerless. What can employees do? How can they manage up?
It does feel powerless, but you actually have more agency than you might think. There are definitely strategies. First things first, when you need to have that difficult conversation, tact is everything. Rule number 1, do not use the word micromanagement.
Oh, interesting. Why not?
Because it's such a loaded term. It immediately puts the manager on the defensive. It sounds like an accusation, and the conversation is likely over before it starts.
Okay, so avoid the M word. What do you say instead?
Frame it around the impact of the behavior on shared goals. Focus on the work, not the person's style. So instead of, you're micromanaging me, try something like, I've noticed that when I get multiple check-ins within an hour, it breaks my concentration, and that actually slowed down my progress on the report you needed. Could we maybe try scheduling a quick check-in at the end of the day instead, so I can have some focus time?
Focus on the impact losing focus, delaying the report, and propose a specific different solution. That sounds much less confrontational.
Exactly. It's about finding a mutually beneficial solution. Another really powerful tactic is proactive transparency. Use their tools against them in a way.
What do you mean?
Anticipate their need for updates, for that feeling of control. Give it to them proactively, but on your terms. Use project management tools, Trello, Asana, whatever your team uses. Keep your tasks updated, show your progress visually.
So they can see what you're doing without having to ask.
Precisely. You're satisfying their underlying anxiety, giving them the visibility they crave, but without the constant interruptions. They can log in and check the dashboard anytime they feel nervous, instead of pinging you directly. It's like anxiety mitigation by proxy.
That's clever. Giving them control, but structuring it. Which leads to setting boundaries, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. Structure is key. Propose replacing those random, disruptive interruptions with scheduled, predictable check-ins. A quick 5-minute stand-up each morning or a dedicated 30-minute meeting once a week, whatever makes sense.
And maybe even prepare for those check-ins.
Definitely. One great tip from the sources was sending a pre-read before scheduled meetings. A brief email with key updates, progress against metrics, any roadblocks.
How does that help?
It gets the basic status updates out of the way beforehand. So when you actually meet, the conversation can stay at a higher level, strategic discussions, decision-making, problem-solving, instead of getting bogged down in reviewing every single task you completed. Keeps it out of the weeds.
Smart. Okay, one last strategy for employees.
Maybe the most powerful long-term one. Try to understand the why. Cultivate a bit of empathy. Step back and try to figure out the root cause of their behavior. What are their pressures? What are their main objectives or fears? What keeps them up at night? Is it pressure from their boss? A fear of missing a deadline? Insecurity about a specific part of the project?
And how does understanding their motive help me?
If you can figure out their underlying concern, you can often address it proactively before they feel the need to micromanage. If you know they're stressed about hitting a certain sales target, maybe you send them a quick, positive update on your leads halfway through the week. Address the root anxiety, and the symptom, the micromanaging, might just fade away.
That requires some emotional intelligence, but I can see how it could be really effective. Okay, let's try and wrap this up. If we distill everything we've discussed, the core message seems crystal clear, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. The path to business success, innovation, employee well-being, it's paved with trust and clarity, not suffocating control.
Right. All the sources point to this. Truly engaged employees, the ones who are proactive, motivated, collaborative, they only thrive when they feel trusted and empowered, not constantly watched and second-guessed.
And this shift away from micromanagement, it's not just, a nice to have to make people feel better. It's a hard-nosed strategic business decision.
Because the evidence is overwhelming. Micromanagement actively costs companies millions. Wasted resources, stalled projects, killed innovation, and that huge cost of replacing talented people who just won't put up with it anymore.
Which really brings us to a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. Considering that massive financial hit of replacing talent again, around a third of someone's annual salary, how quickly should organizations really be pivoting? Shifting investment away from processes designed purely for control and investing instead in the coaching, the clarity, the systems that build trust.
Trust that allows people the autonomy to maybe stumble occasionally, but ultimately to learn, grow, and succeed on their own terms.
At the end of the day, the choice seems pretty stark. Do you invest in control, or do you invest in competence? Because only competence, fueled by trust and autonomy, leads to sustainable growth and real success.